Hi, I'm Maureen Connolly. I'm the editor-in-chief of everydayhealth.com, and I'm here today with Dr. Sanjay Gupta. We're here to talk about stress. We've got an epidemic on our hands in America, and it's called chronic stress. Your new HBO documentary, One Nation Under Stress, premieres March 25th. And it's taking a hard look at the driving factors behind this, as well as the dire consequences that we're facing as a nation as a result of chronic stress. So before we get into what's driving all this, can you define what is chronic stress?
Yeah, chronic stress is basically stress that does not stop. We all need stress as humans, animals, everybody needs stress to some extent. This is the relentless stress that never quite gives your body a break and eventually creates this sort of toxic environment that affects not only your body, but your judgment, your decisions, your behaviors, choices that you make. So it's a sort of a factor that impacts just about every aspect of your life.
So I guess what's driving stress in America?
Well, that is the focus of this film and focus of the last 2 years of my life in some ways. Let me preface by saying that it's worth pointing out that the United States is unique in this regard, okay? We can look at other wealthy nations, you can look at other countries that are similar to the United States, and if you look at every demographic in the developed world since World War II, all of them have been increasing in life expectancy. All of them have been decreasing in mortality. All of them except for one. The only place where that's not happening is the United States.
When I first started looking at these spikes in different causes of death among the white working class, in opioid overdoses, suicides, cirrhosis of the liver, it felt a bit mysterious to me. It took some time still to sort of piece it together and say, whoa, wait a second, there's something going on here.
So now the question, why this specific population? Well, there's, as with these types of things, as in medicine, it's usually a multitude of reasons, but a couple of big ones that were surprising to us was that if you think about who we're talking about here, these are the sons and daughters of the greatest generation, right? Their parents went off and won the World War, came back and helped build America. Their kids were, in many ways, the expectation was they would one day inherit the earth, or they would inherit the United States at a minimum. And instead, you saw jobs leaving, you saw wages decreasing, and now you see this population of people dying at a faster rate than any of their comparable populations anywhere in the developed world. It's the notion of just how toxic the stress is of dashed expectations, of having expected something and not received it, versus simply not receiving it. Turns out dashed expectations is a huge stressor for a society, and it's a stressor that doesn't let go, because it's part of your identity. It's part of who you were supposed to be, your aspiration. So dashed expectations appears to be a big part of this.
I'm stressed because there is a city full of jobs out there and I don't have one of them.
What does it say about us that we need these rage rooms to try and relieve our stress? It's become a fast-growing business.
I just think there's so many demands on people now.
And like, as far as physiologically, is it the cortisol that just is amped up, or adrenaline all the time, that's causing the bulk of the problem?
Yeah, there are certain hormones in the body that are released that are the stress hormones. And again, I want to be clear that sometimes we need these stress hormones. People say, I don't want stress in my life. That is not a practical nor a good sort of aspiration. But the idea that if you have chronic levels of stress, chronic levels of these hormones, your blood pressure, your heart rate, your blood vessels start to change in response to that. You're more likely to develop blockages. You're more likely to develop certain organ dysfunction. What we're now starting to learn is what it does to the brain, and as a result of what it does to the brain, how people behave differently in response to chronic stress. So we spent a lot of time really looking at both aspects of this. What happens when you're just exposed to stress, and what happens when you can get even small breaks from it. And this was fascinating, Maureen. I mean, it changed my life, I will tell you. But first of all, if you don't get a break from it, certain areas of your brain called the prefrontal cortex change. And your ability to make good decisions, your ability to have judgment, your ability to make a smart decision about food later on in the day, how you're going to treat your child later on in the day, how you might treat somebody who's just walking down the street, whether or not you smile. all these things get affected by stress that you may have suffered or endured earlier in the day. So it becomes a self-fulfilling thing. The stress changes your brain, and then your brain is more likely to make poor decisions or not make good decisions.
Could it be that a society gets so stressed out that it actually starts to break?
But I think what was inspiring to me was that if you could find 10 to 15 minutes of your time where you're in control, then you actually saw those changes in the brain start to reverse.
That's fascinating.
It's really fascinating. So 10 to 15 minutes, and all of a sudden you're more likely to make better decisions tonight,
Right.
tomorrow morning,
Right.
in terms of your food, in terms of your relationships, your empathy, because of the 10 to 15 minutes you spent doing your thing, whatever that thing might be.
Right.
And I do that. I feel it. Most people probably generally know that, yeah, I feel better when I do that sort of stuff. But now we can objectively see those changes in the brain, and it makes a huge difference.
That's really motivating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. This was a really fascinating experiment where you take two monkeys. They're Capuchin monkeys, which are the sort of organ grinder monkeys in the movies. Very smart. They're side by side in these cages called Skinner cages. They can see each other. They can see the examiner. They do a task over and over again and get a reward, which is a piece of cucumber. They do this 20 times in a row, and no problem. Do task, which is hand rock, to examiner, they get cucumber. At some point, start giving the monkey on the right a piece of grape, which is a more desirable reward. Monkey on the left can see this and gets progressively more upset, to the point where at some point the cucumber, which was something that was perfectly acceptable just a couple minutes earlier, actually takes and throws back at the examiner, starts rattling the cage, literally, and you can see the stress levels skyrocket in this monkey who's receiving a cucumber. It's so unjust, right? We're doing the same exact thing. Why am I getting a cucumber and this monkey is getting a grape? But Maureen, I'll tell you the thing that was most surprising about that experiment. The stress levels in the cucumber receiving monkey went way up. But the stress levels in the grape receiving monkey also went way up.
I knew that's what you were going to say.
It's one of these things where if you live in a society that has blatant inequality, unfair, unjust, it doesn't make sense that some person would be compensated so much more for the exact same job that I'm doing. Nobody really seems to be perfectly okay with that. No matter where you lie on the spectrum, rich or poor, unfairly compensated or poorly compensated, you have stress levels that go up. It's just unsettling to live in a society like that. And that's another thing that we think is driving some of these deaths of despair. The United States, as far as wealthy nations goes, has one of the highest sort of income inequalities anywhere in the world.